find a game, there's a great store in town.
A magical store.
A ton of fun for everyone, so come and explore. The choices are so big, big, big. The prices are so low. Whoa, come in, have a ball. You know we've got it all at the biggest toy store, Toys R Us.
Hello, this is Billy Core, and welcome to this special Nostalgia Mall video where today we're going to be doing a little bit of reminiscing. I'm sure you've seen in the news the last couple of weeks, especially in the last week or so, that Toys R Us, well, they're going away, it looks like. They filed for bankruptcy last year sometime, but unfortunately that wasn't able to get them out of their problems, so unfortunately they're going to have to shut down all their stores, it looks like. So a major worldwide institution is going away, it looks like, and it's a place that me, along with many others, grew up going to as a kid. And in fact, I still know a couple of kids these days that go to Toys R Us, and I feel bad for them now that it's going out of business, it looks like. So I figured now would be a good time to do a little retrospective video on the history and my memories of Toys R Us. In this video we're going to take a brief look at the history of the store, take a look at some of the memorabilia from Toys R Us over the years that I've acquired, and we're also going to look at some footage of my local Toys R Us here in Greensboro that I took today. So sit back and relax, cause this is going to be a very fun video. So let's go ahead and begin with a little bit of history behind the store. And I'm just discovering we're under a winter weather advisory. And tomorrow's the first day of spring. March. It's time to go home. You're drunk. Anyway, I'm cheating a little bit because I'm reading this off of Wikipedia. But Toys R Us was founded in 1948, so it's turning 70 years old this year. And it was founded by Charles P. Lazarus in its modern form in 1957, but it traces its origins to Lazarus's children's furniture store, which he started in 1948. He added toys to his offering and eventually shifted his focus. The company has been in the toy business for more than 65 years and operates around 800 stores in the United States and around 800 outside the U.S., although these numbers are steadily decreasing with time. Toys R Us expanded as a chain, becoming predominant in its niche field of toy retail. Represented by a cartoon mascot, Geoffrey the Giraffe, from 1969, Toys R Us eventually branched out into launching the store's Babies R Us and the now-defunct Kids R Us. The company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection in the U.S. on September 18th of 2017, and has also filed for bankruptcy protection in Canada. It is stated that its stores will continue to operate, but nevertheless announced a liquidation and closure of yada yada yada. On March 15th, 2018, it was announced that Toys R Us is officially going out of business and selling all 800 of its U.S. stores. In addition, all Toys R Us stores worldwide will be sold off. However, on March 19th, 2018, buyers stated that they were interested in acquiring the rights to the Toys R Us brand name, mascot, and jingle, while other buyers stated that they were interested in purchasing a small number of U.S. stores to operate as showrooms. Now that's actually new to me, and March 19th is the day I'm recording this, so that is news to me. So maybe they'll be staying around in some form or another. I do not know, but nevertheless we'll continue on with the reminiscing. I guess we can go ahead and discuss my personal memories of going to Toys R Us. The Toys R Us's here in Greensboro, we at one time had two of them. One on High Point Road, which is now known as Gate City Boulevard, near Four Seasons Mall, and another one in Greensboro was across from Carolina Circle Mall, which is obviously the one I went to as a kid. Both of them opened, I believe, in 1985. I know that's when the Carolina Circle location opened. The one across from Carolina Circle, unfortunately, went out of business in 2002, the same year the mall closed. And the building itself was demolished in 2005, just before they demolished the mall. So, my childhood Toys R Us has been gone for much longer than the rest of these Toys R Us's that are closing now, so my my childhood one, it's been long gone. But the Toys R Us that is left here in Greensboro, on Gate City Boulevard, it was roughly the same age as the one across from Carolina Circle. Unfortunately, it does not look anything like it did when I went to it as a kid. It was completely remodeled at least a couple of times since, I guess, the late 90s. So the layout and the overall feel of the store is just not the same, unfortunately. But we will be exploring that store later on in this video, so stay tuned for that. The one across from Carolina Circle, though, I went there as much as I did the mall, actually. I got a lot of stuff from there as a kid. One of my favorites being my Power Wheels Jeep, which I got there in 1994, along with a bunch of Little Tykes cars, like the Cozy Coupe. My grandmother got me that for my birthday back in 1991 from that Toys R Us. But yeah, the Power Wheels Jeep, though, you've probably seen it on my channel before. I have a video of me driving it around my yard back in 1995. I remember when I first started kindergarten back in 1995, I had a hard time dealing with the change of with school, this new environment that I was shoved into, and I did not handle school very well, and I would freak out every day before school. But one thing that did help was almost every day after school, when my dad would pick me up, he would take me down to the Carolina Circle Mall Toys R Us to get a Thomas the Tank Engine toy, and then we would go to the nearby Wendy's and have a burger. So that's one of my very fond memories of that particular store. I also got my very first video game console at that Toys R Us, and that was back in 1997. I remember playing on my Packard Bell Legend 822 CDT that morning, and my dad coming up to me and saying, "Hey, you want to go do something, Billy?" And I remember us going to a photo booth at Carolina Circle Mall to have our pictures taken. And then we went across the street to Toys R Us, and out of nowhere my dad decided to get me my very first game console. Obviously I was only 7 years old at the time, so I didn't do any research on what consoles were the best. Seeing it was 1997, I believe the ones they were selling at the time were probably Nintendo 64s, Sega Saturns, Sony PlayStations, the Super Nintendo, and the Sega Genesis. Unfortunately, I went with the Sega Saturn. That's the one I decided to go with. I think because it had an Earthworm Jim game to go with it, which was Earthworm Jim 2, so I went with the Sega Saturn and soon discovered there really wasn't many games to get for it. So not long after that, I took it to a video game store in town and traded it in for a Nintendo 64, which I still own to this day. But still, though, my first game console came from that particular Toys R Us, and yeah, so many good memories there. Used my first gift card there. That's kind of a random memory. I always dreamed of participating in the Nickelodeon Super Toy Run. A lot of you may not remember that, but for those of you who don't, it was a contest that Nickelodeon would have back in the 90s, where you would enter and you would win this shopping spree where you would run through a Toys R Us location and grab all you could within 5 minutes to put in your cart, and whatever you grabbed you could keep. And I always dreamed of entering that, but unfortunately I never did, which is probably for the best. I doubt I ever would have won, but who knows, maybe I would have. Okay, next thing we're going to do is we're going to take a quick look at some catalogs and some toys that I have from Toys R Us that I've acquired over the years. I've got a kind of a very small collection of Toys R Us memorabilia, and I would like to share it with you guys, so let's go check it out. One thing I forgot to mention when I was giving you my memories of Toys R Us was after I got a video game console for the first time, I always thought it was interesting how you would buy a video game from Toys R Us. A lot of you probably remember this as well. They would have the video game aisle, but they didn't actually have the video game boxes to take up to the counter and buy. They actually had pictures of it with these yellow price tags, these giant yellow price tags, and you would grab one of those and take it up to the front counter to pay for it. And then there was this little corner of the store there at the front of the store where they kept all the video games behind this huge glass, and you would take that ticket up there and they would go behind that huge glass, get the game for you and bring it to you. I always thought that was fascinating for some reason as a kid, but I went to the Toys R Us here in Greensboro today, the one that's left on Gate City Boulevard, and they do it completely different now. It's just the actual game cases are behind the glass now, and a lot of them you can actually pick up and take to the front counter, so it's completely different now, but I digress. Here is part of my Toys R Us collection right here. First of all, we have this. This is a Toys R Us yo-yo that I purchased off eBay a few years ago for a few dollars. This dates from the year 1993. And I probably had one of these back then. Wouldn't surprise me. But it shows the old looking Jeffrey mascot there they had back then. There's the back of it. It's still sealed, and it's going to stay that way, ages 3 and up. I have never been able to play with a yo-yo, to be honest with you. A lot of people are able to, but I've just never been able to master that art. All I'm able to do is tie the string around my finger and let the yo-yo drop on the ground, and that's as far as I can go. I've just never had the proper coordination for stuff like that. Now, here's my favorite part right here, the catalogs. I've got 3 Toys R Us catalogs from the 90s, and I've done videos on each of them over the years, but we're going to do a brief recap on them. First of all, we got this. This is the Toys R Us catalog from Christmas time of 1993. So I would have been about 3 or 4 at the time. I really need to be careful with this catalog because the staples are becoming undone. But thankfully I did scan this, so I've got a PDF copy of it on the computer. Old VHS tapes there. Old coupons that expired November 30th, 93. I'll just go to a random page, I suppose. Oh, I had one of those actually back in 1994. I got it for Christmas that year. It was neat. One side of the road would be an actual road, and you could flip it over and it would be a railroad track. That thing was really cool. Really cool. And my church nursery had one of those. Little People Farms from Fisher-Price. And of course the board games. You know, it's 1993 when you got Ask Xandar, or as the Flying Scotsman calls it, Ask Santa, and Dream Phone. Rollerblades, Was never allowed to have one of those as a kid. Power Wheels Jeeps that I did have, as I mentioned earlier, except mine was red, which is not in this catalog. No, I didn't have the Barbie Lamborghini. Get your mind into healthier states of presence. X-Men, Stretch Armstrong, and what you guys are mostly excited for, the video games. Super Nintendo games here. I actually picked up a Super Nintendo Classic the other day at Best Buy. Very surprised to see that for sale. I thought they were all gone now, but went ahead and grabbed one, and I have to admit it is pretty cool. Game Boy, Sega Genesis Model 2 there. Game Gear, I've still got mine. Sega CD. And the Model 2 Model 2 NES. And these are Toys R Us locations in Pennsylvania, apparently. My favorite one here, because it's from my favorite year, the Toys R Us catalog from 1994. Unfortunately, this, along with the other one I'll be showing, is too big to fit in my scanner, so I have no way of really preserving this other than taking pictures of it with my camera. If anyone else has a better solution out there to get this scanned and preserved, please let me know. But yeah, this is from '94. I think I had one of those McDonald's toys there. And the catalogs that expired November 30th of '94. Go to a random page here. Some car tracks there. Had one of those, except much later. I got mine in '98. Or I sleep in a big bed with my wife. Simpsons reference there. And of course, '94, everyone was obsessed with Lion King. I was too. Rollerblades, toy guns there. Radio control cars, I always hated these because I could never get them to work right. The radio range was always terrible. And of course, everyone and their mother had a toy fire truck growing up. Video games, got the Model 2 Genesis there again with Sonic 2. Along with Genesis games there. Over here, Sega CD. Super Nintendo, with my favorite Super Nintendo game, Donkey Kong Country, which you could start reserving November 12th, 1994. Although that's a very different looking box art than I'm used to for that game. Game Boy games there. Game Gear. And some NES games there. And the Tiger handheld games, Master Video Painter. Now this I did have as a kid, although mine might have been a Disney version of it. The Fisher-Price tape player. I want to get one of those to do a video of sometime. Well, those are just really fascinating to me for some reason. Games. What could be greater than playing a game of golf with a gator? I won't sing again, I promise. Seeing in the game, wow. That sounds so exciting. And Clarissa Explains It All, the game, which I understand they're actually considering reviving that show, starring Melissa Joan Hart. So I would really be interested to see that. Be the first thing worth watching on Nickelodeon in years. Triple arcade. The old toy computers there. But if you want to see these more in detail, I've got videos of these on my channel from a few years ago. The girl dolls. And this one right here from 1995, November of 95. And there's that Super Toy Run I was talking about earlier. The 1995 edition of it. That's where you could enter coupons there. Let's go to a random page again. Empire of Carolina. Oh yeah, Cool Tools. I had a bunch of those growing up. Cool Tools. Video games again, including the Virtual Boy of all things. Genesis, Super Nintendo, Sega CD again. The Sega Nomad, I always thought that was a cool idea. A portable Sega Genesis. And the PlayStation, which was a new thing at the time. That show always scared me to death. Yes, I know, I'm a wimp. Get over it. It's my life, Mom. The old toy computers once again. The Pico, which I believe was made by, yes indeed, Sega. Don't laugh, but I actually did have one of those. Back in '93, actually. Didn't know they were still making Teddy Ruxpins in 1995, huh? I got one of those for my birthday in 1995, actually. And I remember playing with it the night of my birthday, my 6th birthday, and this vacuum cleaner sucking up something from the floor, and it made a really loud noise, terrified me that it would catch on fire, and I never played with it again. Again, I was a wimp. Barbies. And computer games. There's Freddy Fish and the Case of the Missing Kelp Seeds from Humongous Entertainment. I actually bought my copy of this game from the Toys R Us at Carolina Circle Mall, actually. I believe in 1996, so yeah, it's cool to see that there because of that. Alright, let's head over to my computer and take a look at some old newspaper ads from Toys R Us. Okay, the first ad we're going to look at is this one from November 26 of 1989. This was actually published the day before I was born. Now this particular one showcases some old video game consoles. Well, they weren't old at the time, obviously. But on the top left, we've got the TurboGrafx 16, also known as the PC Engine in Japan, I believe. The Sega Genesis right here on the right, on the top right that is, which I believe made its debut that year in the US. Bottom left, we've got the Game Boy, which also made its debut that year. And on the bottom right, the most popular game console of 1989, from what I've seen, the Nintendo Entertainment System, complete with the NES Advantage. I can't remember if I still got an NES Advantage or not in storage. I have to check. But as you can see on the bottom, it has the locations for the two Greensboro stores. Ring Road next to Carolina Circle Mall, and Greensboro South on High Point Road, which is the one we'll be visiting later on in this video. Alright, we've headed 4 years into the future. This is from October 24th of 1993, where we're getting an advertisement for Aladdin on VHS. You know, I've still never seen any Aladdin movie at all. I've just never really cared to make the effort to see any of those movies. But I have played the Aladdin video game that's advertised in this ad. This is the one for the Sega Genesis. I have played that a couple of times, and it is a pretty good game. Happy Holidays, Barbie, the Fisher-Price activity table, the Ertl Bumbleball. Now, this is a toy that I absolutely wanted at this time, although I think it was more around early '94 when I was after this. You could not find them anywhere in Greensboro. We went to every toy store in town. No one ever had them. I don't think Winston-Salem had them either, actually. But eventually I did find one, and I sadly no longer have it, but I do have another one in my collection that I got about 10 years ago at an antique store, so there you go. And also the Play School Talking Barney doll. I am ashamed to admit this, but I did have one of those. And the 2XL robot, I forget what that is. It's interactive audio tape programs, features 2XL, it's text is too small to read, and again, the two Greensboro locations are listed at the bottom there. Okay, here's another ad, this time from my 5th birthday from November 27th of 1994, featuring a few video games, including one of my favorites, Donkey Kong Country, along with some Sega Genesis games, including Sonic and Knuckles. As for the toys, we've got Gymnast Barbie, Jenny Gymnast, Bedtime Barbie, a lot of Barbie dolls here, and Gator Golf, a game that I actually did get, although it was years later, in like 1998, I want to say. But yeah, very cool stuff in this ad as well. Okay, one more ad. This is from Christmas Day of 1994. Most of the same stuff as usual. We've got a Bumble Head. I don't remember that. Apparently that was a Bumble Ball like I talked about earlier, except it has a face on it. I gotta admit, that looks kind of creepy. Maybe it's a hybrid of a Bumble Ball and a Mr. Potato Head. I can't say I remember that, but what else we got here? Not much else of interest here, but again, if you want to look at any of these ads, just pause the video and you can get a closer look at everything. But yeah, let's move on, shall we? Okay, now let's go check out the last remaining Toys R Us here in Greensboro. Again, this Toys R Us looks completely different than how it looked as a child, but you know what? This will probably be my last chance ever going to a Toys R Us, so who gives a crap? Let's go explore Toys R Us as it stands today. Okay, we're going inside the Toys R Us now. Here's the front of the store. I'm using my camera glasses, by the way, because it's just the safest option. No, it's not the best quality, but it's what I have to use. Okay, the noise you're hearing is not actually from Toys R Us. This is just some generic ambient sounds that I downloaded offline because the store was playing some music in the background and I didn't want to get a content ID, so I had to replace it with some ambient sounds called Marketplace I found online, and I think it matches pretty well, so just bear with that. Here's the seasonal section. They got their summer stuff out. I actually am looking at these pools because I'm interested in getting one, but I didn't get one today. Again, this Toys R Us was remodeled sometime in like the late 90s, early 2000s. and it looks nothing like the Toys R Us I went to as a kid. And I would absolutely love, and I mean love, to find pictures of the inside of any Toys R Us before all these were remodeled in the late 90s, early 2000s. But unfortunately, they just seem to be hard to find for some reason. So if anyone has pictures of Toys R Us, let me know. I used to have one of these as a kid. In fact, I still have it. It's up in the attic. I can't believe Thomas the Tank Engine is still popular with kids these days. Also, if the video is too shaky, I apologize. I know I'm bad about this, but you just have to bear with me. One of these days I'm going to get a pair of better camera glasses to do these videos with, so until then, just bear with me. In Toys R Us, always had this certain smell to it, like brand new plastic, that kind of smell to it. And that's a smell I certainly remember from my childhood, and this particular Toys R Us to this day still has that smell to it, which is nice. Yes, I know I'm weird to notice smells in stores. I still remember taking pictures of Carolina Circle Mall back in 2005 when it was being demolished, and I could still smell the mall itself outside. It was creepy, but cool. These are something I used to love as a kid. Little cars to drive around the house. I used to have stuff like those. And here's the Power Wheels cars. It's not limited to Jeeps these days. They got all kinds of cars now, like Porsches, Lamborghinis, Range Rovers. It's stuff I would have loved to have as a kid. Bicycles. And this Toys R Us did not have any going out of business signs or sales. Everything was just business as usual here. Then again, the announcement was just made a couple of days ago, so it's still pretty soon for anything like that to happen. Which I kind of prefer this way. I want to get video footage of this store when it still looked healthy. Somewhat healthy, I guess. I sure did love Hot Wheels as a kid. Just can't believe that thing was $200 though, whatever it was. And there were Minions on that aisle. Gotta say, I'm not a fan of Minions. I think they're stupid. Going into the video game section. Again, it's very different from the video game section I remember back in the 90s. Especially right here. Notice how the games are actually in their cases behind the glass instead of having to take a ticket to the counter. Kids these days don't know the excitement of taking the ticket to the counter to get your game. DVDs there. I do remember getting movies at the Toys R Us growing up, except they were on VHS back then. Some random cheap electronics there.
tablets right here. Some music CDs, except they're all like children's CDs, like Kids Bop. Ooh. American Girl. I mean, girl. Some board games there from Hasbro. I did get a couple of board games back in the day from Toys R Us. The only problem was I didn't really have anyone to play with though. And here are some very sad looking Peeps. I thought these were expired, but they don't expire until a year from now. Yeah, I would not get those Peeps. I do like them, but not when they're all shriveled up. And I make a big mistake right here by trying to go out the entrance. I actually keep forgetting that this is actually audio that I downloaded offline. Alright, this will probably be my last time ever leaving a Toys R Us. Hard to believe, folks. Hard to believe. Anyway, let's head back home and conclude this video.
Well, I guess that about does it for this video. It's a shame that children of the future are not going to be able to experience going to a giant store dedicated to toys. I thought that was just the most amazing concept as a child, but I guess the times they are changing. I'm not going to go into why that is, all the factors involving this. It's probably a little too controversial. I have my opinions on it, so I'll just keep it to myself. But anyway, rest in peace, Toys R Us. And until next time, this is Billy Core reminding you we have new videos every Tuesday and Thursday, sometimes in between. And if you would like to, follow me on Patreon. The link to that is down below in the description. Until next time, this is Billy Core, signing off.